Welcome back to No Guy Bicycles. Hanging with the guy. Hey, I'm Justin the Guy, and special feature, we're going to check out Precision e-bike with Josh here. Locally in the Fort Collins area, and with my 35 years of experience of working in the industry, this is a breath of fresh air to see a shop like this. Well, thanks for hanging out with me and inviting me over, Josh. This is a real treat for me and probably for all of you guys to take a look. Yeah, e-bikes might not be your thing, but hey, this might change your mind. And Lisa have an understanding of what the e-bike market has become and potentially going to. But talking with Josh here, I just want to kind of get a little bit of insights. I know he's been doing it for a couple of years, but I think he has a huge history or a long history within the e-bike or electric realm. Why don't you give us a little bit of teaser of what you got going on in the history?
Hey, thank you so much for coming by. I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I got into it back in 1999. We were at a trade show. We were in a little family bike shop called Valley Bicycles, and we went to Pennsylvania, and they had this big trade show going on there. And Shimano showed up, and they had 25 electric bikes from all over the world. They had bikes from Panasonic and Yamaha and Mitsubishi and Sanyo, and I was like, wow, okay, that's where the future is. Like, I got to get on board with that. So I quit working for other people and went back to school.
Oh, wow.
Started studying entrepreneurial business and light electric vehicle design, and we started hand making bicycles at Hampshire College and UMass. Through 2005, and we started hand making runabout cycles. We did electric trikes and mountain bikes, and we created one of our very first electric cargo cruisers.
Wow.
And ran that till about 2012.
Okay. So you really hit the market super early.
Yeah.
Before the cargo bikes came a thing and all that.
Yeah.
I remember about 10 years ago, I was in a shop and this individual bought a cargo bike. It was probably here to the wall. I mean, the thing was massive.
Yeah.
And it had an e-bike motor on it. And we're all just like, as mechanics, it was kind of like the first time we saw this kind of evolution in person, going, wow, this is interesting. And, you know, a lot of us were very, at first, kind of reserved, to say it politely, like, what is going on here? But lo and behold, it's blew up today. Yeah, thanks for, telling us about your little bit of history here. When did you start and what inspired you to open up a small shop? And were you out of your garage first, or you just decided to I'm just going to open up this little location and go for it?
Technically, I guess it was out of the garage first, in that during the COVID years, I was doing some work out of the out of my shop and the garage.
Sure.
But really, really low scale. We did a couple of Craigslist stuff, and but I was working for Lightning Electric Motors out in Loveland, where we were converting vans into electric vans. I was working as a supervisor there and teaching people about how to do wiring and working with chargers and batteries, controllers. And when that went south, I said, okay, I really want to be working for myself again, and I got to get back in the bicycle industry. And so it was 2 years ago, I went ahead and got myself 600 square feet here and a little studio shop, and started with an ad in Craigslist. And the very first ad we put out, a guy came in with an electric trike from Holland and needed help, and we were able to get his wiring system back together and running, and he and his family were able to start riding again, and that was the beginning.
Wow.
Yeah, and so it's been 2 years here now.
Okay, nice. That's a great 2 years or 3 years maybe in the garage kind of thing. We're looking at retail space, and it is a big jump. I've been toying this with myself through my ventures of being a garage shop, and every time I think of it, I'm like, oh, do I want to have overhead? Do I want to have a front door? Do I want to have all these things that circumference the cost of running a business? And I mean, you have a small space and your overhead is manageable, but you still have to have a certain level of volume to do that. And when you started off, did you have like numbers of X how many you'd have to do repairs or units you'd have to sell? Did you have any vendors to begin when you first opened the doors?
These are all good questions. Yeah, so no, I started out, I literally just brought my tools from the garage and set up and built my own bench, and I put all my own bikes on the floor to
Oh, okay.
kind of like get the pump started. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And
Yeah.
so I was showing bikes that I had worked on my own stuff, and
Okay.
then had to start organizing and figuring out how we're going to get suppliers, and then we went through and got powered up by J&B and
Okay.
Quality and the big players, and
Yeah.
filling out all this paperwork and getting the insurance and your overhead set up so that you could legally be a vendor.
Yeah.
You got to get all your I's dotted and T's crossed, and
Yeah.
then once we got through that gauntlet, it started to open up some more. And yeah, I knew that we had to basically bring in about $3,000 a month to be able to take care of everything.
Okay.
For your insurance and your rent and your power, everything included. Yeah, and so that was kind of my target number.
Yeah.
And right away, we were able to take care. By about the fourth or fifth month, I wasn't so worried about paying the rent anymore.
Oh, that's great.
I felt really good. I was like, okay, we got something. It's
Yeah.
going here,
That's good.
and started bringing on new bikes and bringing in new bikes to sell as well, because I originally had set up just as a service shop. I was like, okay, the electric bike industry has got a challenge where a lot of the bike shops are kind of like, we don't really want to deal with this particular thing, and they don't have a place for it. And so I found an awesome opportunity where we've got about 7 or 8 bike shops in the local area that send me work because they don't want to deal with batteries and chargers and controllers and the equipment that's up and above traditional bicycle repair work, right?
Exactly.
And so for me, all of a sudden, I had people that I've known for the last 10 years that have started sending me work.
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden, I realized I got to turn around product quick because I don't have enough space to carry it all here.
Yeah.
I got to, and so it just, as soon as I got going, it was like, okay, get going. Like I got to turn product around fast. And so.
Yeah, I can see that within any bike shop, traditional bike shop for sure. Even with the corporate stores like Trek and Specialized and maybe even REI, where, yes, they have a fair amount of training for their specific brands, but if you have one of the 800 other brands that roll in the door, which, I mean, you can tell me if I'm wrong or right about this, is, the basic concepts are still there. It's just, you may need a little bit different tooling. You may need a little bit different understanding of how those motors and the batteries and all that work with those specific different brands. And when you're looking at a bike shop mechanic that's like pigeonholed with one brand and they're like, what's this? It really throws them for a loop. And for them, they see it as a loss as a business-wise because they're spending too much time on that one mechanic, working on something that might take them a couple days, which may take you a couple hours to do. And outsourcing service is nothing new within the cycle industry. We've been doing that with suspension work and all that for years.
Yeah, yeah.
And, it's kind of interesting to see, like, is that probably the biggest thing that you've seen from the last 2 years, from opening the doors to currently today and maybe going to this next year? Are you looking at selling more of your own brands that you sell and doing more community service work with other shops?
Well, what I've found is that, number one, most of the people that come through here for work are riding their bikes all the time. And so we find a real strong transportation group where people, for one reason or another, are out there riding electric bikes as their primary source of transportation.
Okay.
And then the second group, if you would, is really the cargo bikes. And we're seeing a tremendous amount of electric cargo bikes where there's a lot of families who are empowered to bring their kids back and forth to school carrying kind of a heavier load, And so we're working on Shimano and Bosch, kind of the big players now. We got certified with a few of these different companies. And so we've got testing equipment where we can hook it up to our computer and be able to pull trouble codes. Yeah. And then we can update firmware and be able to keep their systems on the road, because these days they've got really amazing diagnostics equipment that are on board. And so that helps the mechanic out a lot when you can turn it on and pull the trouble code and say, oh, yeah, the battery's having a problem. And then we go to a battery tester where we can really cycle it a couple of times and understand, does it have the full capacity or not? Are we working with something that's only got a third of life left? Or is it really, you know, a connection challenge? And for us, we're really trying to keep people riding and keep empowering the local community, because as you know, up here in Fort Collins, we've got over 100 miles of bike paths.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
And growing.
the cycling infrastructure is just really phenomenal.
Yeah.
And so we're seeing more and more empowered cyclists that are using it as transportation. And when they need it now. I mean, you know, that's kind of the challenge with a service center like this, is like they'll come rolling in and like, what time can I have this? Like, I'm like, how about in a day or two? And they're like, no. I need to ride home tonight. Like, I'm like, okay. It's going to be an hour. Why don't you go down, have a gelato, hang out, and we'll put some new brake pads on here, because that's the main thing, is these bikes are wasting through brake pads. Yeah. And you got to have brakes, you know, and so...
yeah. So I wanted to talk about the elephant in the room of servicing e-bikes, and when a customer purchase the e-bike and they're like, oh, this is the greatest thing in the world, and they go for a couple rides, or they test ride and buy it, and it's not a cheap investment. These are a little more expensive than your normal bikes, and they continue to bring the prices down a little bit, but there's a compromise on quality of parts and so forth. The one main thing is a lot of people understand is the weight of these. They're a lot heavier. You're pushing a lot more, weight of the battery and the motor and all that, and the structure of the bike to support that has to be heavier too.
Yeah, for sure.
So tell me what you've seen, and you probably will school me on this, of what wear out parts that people have been seeing, or what you've been seeing on a lot of the, I would say, entry level, let's say like the $800 and less price point versus more expensive ones. Is it same about for both, or the wear out? Let's identify the wear out points first, and we'll break that down.
So, unfortunately, you know, when we were growing up, and we would tell people to go to the bike shop, because you have a level of quality that comes from a bike shop, because the family that ordered that chose to make sure that they're choosing a good level of quality, right? And so we would say kind of avoid the big box stores. You know, you don't really want to get something for super cheap, because you don't get what you don't pay for.
Sure.
Well, that still holds true in the electric bicycle industry, where you know, there are some people who are buying bikes for $400, $500, $600 from the big box stores, or from online from, you know, the big sites, and honestly, they may not last the one season.
Oh, really?
And so the challenge is, number one, it wasn't really assembled well, and so they're running with loose parts on there, which wears away really quickly. And so we get a lot of new tune-ups that are just like, I bought this bike and it's loose, my wife wants it safe. Can we, you know, yeah, we'll do a full tune-up on there, give them a braking gear tune-up, and make sure that everything is on there properly, the way it's supposed to be, and then actually lubricated properly. So when they walk out of here, they've got good air pressure, the wheels are on properly, they've got the brakes set up so that it can stop really well for an emergency stop, and all of the pieces and parts are where they're supposed to be, and it's actually functioning.
Yeah.
And they can go out and ride, because it doesn't come that way out of the box. And unfortunately, some of these companies are thinking like, here you go, you just put it together, you know. No, you really need to go through in what I call a systems approach to make sure that the frame is good, the headset's good, the fork's good, the brakes are good, the shifting is good, and then you've got something that they can run for a little while.
Would you say? I mean, we've been saying this since like the '90s and the late '80s, like, if like the department stores got their crap together and actually had trained mechanics assembling their fleet, we would have a little bit more of a competition in the market. And today I walk into your local Walmart and you see a row of e-bikes and a row of everything else too. And in my mind, yes, they're probably not as good batteries or motors or parts to put on there, but if they're assembled correctly, like they bought it and rolled it right in here and had it tuned up, do you think they'll get a lot more life out of it? And how much life would that be?
I would say 2 to 3 times the life expansion. And the reason why is because we see cables that are just super loose, brakes that are super loose, wheels that are super loose. I mean, I had one in the other day and it didn't have the spacers for the front wheel. So the wheel was traveling on the axle left and right. It was being held in place by the rotor. I mean, I was like, okay, you need help here.
Yeah.
Let me work on this, And so...
well, that pulls on my heartstrings a little bit because a lot of people, they can't, that's all they can afford. And once you understand the concept of taking that level of arrogance and just elitism, which has been thrown around there in a lot of shops, like if you pull that away, it's like, take care of that person like if it was your own mom, right? Like, that's where it's like, okay, yeah. And that gives them opportunity to, I see it, I wouldn't say to upsell, but it gives them an opportunity to ride, enjoy it, get into it. And then once they do get to that point of, hey, Josh, I've ridden this for like 3 years, and you're like, it's not worth putting the money into it because the battery's about toast or the motor's toast. They're going to be looking for your professional advice. Like, well, okay, what's the next step up I can get without being over and beyond price point? And what is the benefits that I'm going to get at that next level? Is it weight? Is it more efficiency of battery? What's the other mystery pieces to the puzzle here?
I believe that it's quality control out of the factory. Okay. I think there should be a law against plastic brake handles. I think there should never be plastic brake levers on any bicycles whatsoever. I think that there has to be a level of quality where you can run that bike for a decade. And so if you go to a bike shop and you buy an electric bike from a bike shop, you can run that for a decade. Yeah, you're going to have to replace the battery once in the middle at about 5 years. Okay. But you've gotten to a point where you've got hydraulic brakes, the brake materials are made out of a high enough quality that they don't fall apart so fast. You've got aluminum frame, you've got alloy wheels, you've got the components that are necessary to be able to go the distance. Okay. And yeah, you should get your bike tuned up once a year because we still got to tension the wheels. We got to make sure that your brake pads are thick enough. We got to make sure that your cables are all situated so that they're effective when you need to do that emergency stop. Yeah. And and so usually there's a few brands that I recommend that they recycle the materials. You can bring it to the local bicycle recycle place and move on and get yourself some equipment that's worth working with, okay. Right? And so there are a few that I just will not work with. Sure. Primarily because you can't get parts out of that particular company anymore. Yeah. Right? And so if their company's not willing to service their own product by getting you the parts you need to keep their bike working, then we don't need to be working with that company. Sure. And so there are some that are just bottom of the barrel, won't work with them anymore. Yeah. But there's only a couple. Okay. And above that, I actually really enjoy working on the least expensive trashed bikes because I could do the most improvement. Exactly. You get a fresh set of brake pads on there, you straighten out the rotor, you tighten up the headset, and then put a new bottom bracket in, new chain, and a new cassette, and some fresh rubber on there, and that thing is running tight again. Yep. And they could get another season out of it. And so that's kind of where I pride myself, is that I kind of go the extra distance for the people that are coming in without much money that need the help. And then when the customer comes in who's got all the money, it doesn't need much, well, that kind of makes up for it. Yeah. And so there's sometimes when I'm really helping somebody out for low money, low dollars, because I know they're out there working against traffic all the time with this equipment, and I want it to work really well for them. For me, it's safety first, right? We got to get the brakes working really, really well. Once we get past that, then we can start to get into, well, if you got rid of those silly, huge, fat, knobby tires and went with something a little narrower and higher pressure, we can get you the efficiency that you want so that you can go from town to town and on that one charge, you know. And so then you're talking about improving the vehicle, improving their ability to be able to go a longer ways on less energy.
Yeah, there's a huge catering to what kind of riding a person's doing, and that's always been the case for decades. Like, they'll buy a mountain bike back in the 90s and these knobbies, and they're just riding on the bike path. And they're like, okay, let's put a semi-slick on there, and it's a night and day difference of a riding experience. And you know, safety is first, but then you have like the technical aspects of, you know, what's going to wear out first. Brakes, because it's a heavier bike, and want those to be safe. I've heard within drivetrains, if a lot of people, they could just get stuck in that 1 or 2 gears and just kind of burn out those cassettes. It's better to knock down the power a little bit, make yourself pedal a little more and get a little more exercise, but yet leveraging the shifting of those gears on, if you have that particular model, it has like 9 or 10 gears in the back to distribute the wear pattern and all that. So is the market coming out with more robust cassettes and stronger chains for e-bike specific?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. You can get like the chains, they'll have an E by it. The tires, they'll be E certified.
Oh, okay, tires too.
Yeah,
I know that.
yeah, and so you're paying for a little bit thicker material that's going to last you a little bit longer, and it's worth it because basically we've got 2 different types of electric bikes. There's either the hub motor or there's a mid-drive. Okay. And the mid-drive goes through chains of cassettes a lot faster because you're running a higher torque through there. You're pulling that chain a lot more. Sure. And so we'll say the same standard for traditional road bikes. After 2,000 miles, you want to put a chain and freewheel on there to be able to not destroy the front drive cog. Okay. You know. Well,
with me, what I've learned, and correct me if I'm wrong, and anybody that's watching this, put comments below. I'm sure there'll be a lot of chitter chatter. But feel free, if any experiences or strikes a chord. This is a community, so please join it, and definitely put in some comments below. But I've always been taught from day one, back in 1989, that if you do your chain, you catch it before it stretches too far, you can get 2 chains to 1 cassette. Is that kind of equation work in the e-bike reality? Yeah. Or is it something that is like basically just new chain and cassette? And chains, they can vary on e-bikes. They're probably more expensive, so you're probably looking at 40 or 50 bucks for a chain. Cassettes are anywhere between, you know, 50 to 90, depending whatever level that you're looking at. So that is, well, let's just say $150 lift. Is there a way to combat that and like save your chain a little bit longer, or your cassette a little bit longer before you pay that much more?
Absolutely. You know, basically, you got to use your gears, right? Yeah. And so we still find ourselves in a position of teaching people how to use their gears. You got to be thinking ahead to be able to say, I'm coming to a stop and I'm going to shift my bike down into a low gear. And that is what really protects the equipment to be able to go longer, is using your gears to be able to run it into a lower gear so that you're not putting such stress on the chain. There are some people who feel that you could just leave it in 5th or 6th gear all the time. Yeah. And they start from a stop in 5th or 6th gear, and that equipment does not last long at all. Yeah. And so those people are definitely changing a chain and a cassette at the same time. Yeah. But the people who are always cyclists anyways and then got into using an electric assist that know how to shift properly, yeah, you can run 2 chains and then change the cassette like on the 3rd setup, you know. Once you're distributing that load, for sure. Right, exactly, because it's not just 1 or 2 teeth that are just, or cogs that are really, really worn down. And so you measure the chain to see what kind of stretch you got, you know. But you got to also kind of look at the wear pattern on the teeth of the cassette itself and understand that rider's habit. Are they always down in those higher gears, or are they actually using their low gears to be able to preserve their equipment?
Yeah, I even have former racers that are customers, and they know I call them grinders. You know, they're not riding e-bikes. They're on their Dura-Ace equipment. They're on the big gear up front, and they're 3 and a little in the back. And yeah, it doesn't matter if they had 20 or 50 gears. They'd only would run 3. And you look at the cassette, and I just laugh because the bottom 3 are just toast, and the rest of the cassette is new.
Yeah,
And it's like,
yeah.
oh, and I try to like shift just a little.
You just come up with a great invention. You're going to start selling just the bottom 3.
Yeah, just like the bottom
the 3 cogs.
Well,
Right?
back in the day, you were able to buy just like 1 or 2 of the cogs and switch those out, but that's nor here nor there anymore. But I want to go into touch base on lubricating and prevention at home. What kind of lubes that you suggest using on a drivetrain? Is it different than the regular cycle? Or is it different for e-bikes? Do they have a different formula for their chains?
Well, you caught me there. I'm kind of old school, Justin.
Fair enough. I'm old enough to be old school. Like, oh, I'm just going to stick with this.
Basically, I'm stuck in the old Phil Wood, and the old Tri-Flow. You know, I haven't really evolved from there. I mean, I really like Tri-Flow because it's a penetrant. And it could cut through those rusty spots and get it free again.
Yeah.
But it really stays on the chain.
Yeah.
You know, I don't like Teflon. I don't think it's a great thing to have. But you know, keep it out of your pans. Don't eat the Teflon surface pans. But for a bike chain, I think it works pretty well. Yeah. So I really do recommend maybe once or twice a month a light application of Tri-Flow on there onto the chain and all the pivot points of the derailleurs, and that can really help keep that system running in between tune-ups where we take it all apart and really clean it.
Yeah, we put an ultrasonic cleaner or solvent tanks and get all that gunk out and flush it out. Which alludes to another question, and this might trip you up. Wax chains. Wax chains has become, well, it's not new. It's been from like, you have old Tour de France poster over there, and it was back in the day, they just dripped candle wax on the drivetrain. Yeah. And now they've been reformulated with silica and black and all sorts of different brands out there now. And there's been testing showing it has, improves the wattage and slows down the wear tear of the cassette and the chain and so forth. Do you think wax chains would be a great application for the e-bike, or is it something that you want to just stick with your traditional lube?
I tell you what, Justin, I've been doing this for a long time. I mean, I've been working on electric bikes for over 20 years. Yeah. All different ways of building bikes and racing bikes. We used to run recumbent bikes at Portland International Raceway. We've developed bikes to climb mountains. We've gone over Pikes Peak 2 different times. We've gone over Estes Park. We've gone over Independence Pass. You know, we've run these machines for a long time. And for me, generally speaking, the Tri-Flow works pretty well for all the local commuters that are trashing it through the salty weather in the winter, and you know, that works pretty well. But there's a new class of electric cyclists that are coming out right now. And what we're getting is more and more road bike riders coming in and getting conversions. And when we do a conversion on a high-end road bike that's really lightweight, yeah, that's a contender where they're going to feel the efficiency difference because they're running narrow, higher pressure tires. They're running the least amount of power as possible. They're kind of reserving that power just for the hill climbs.
Sure.
And they're pacing themselves and staying with their friends at a certain level. And so for them, I think the efficiency could matter, where you could get out a few more extra watts out of their own body, human power, to be able to go the distance, to use the least amount of battery power, to use the smallest battery so that their assist system is the smallest and lightest that they can use. Wow. And so for those riders, yeah, I think we're going to see more and more people running high-end equipment that are going to be in that area where that could be an advantage for them.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely is. I have several customers they do have e-bikes, and I do the general maintenance, like the brakes and the drivetrain stuff. But any of the battery stuff, I'm like, got to go talk to this guy because I'm not obviously equipped and all that.
Well, I went a little
distance?
So, Justin, I've really gone the distance, and I've gotten some new equipment. And so, we bought battery analyzers for all different bikes. We bought analyzers for Bosch specific. We work with Shimano system, and then we can really test and understand what is the capacity of that equipment. And so we're at a point where we are understanding that the electric bike is more efficient than we are.
Yeah.
If I go out for a 3-hour ride, right?
Yeah.
And I'm out there and I'm drinking my water and I'm getting after it and I'm hammering on my pedals and I've got a good ride. When I come back after a 3-4 hour ride, I need like a $10 burrito and a beer. I'm bringing the fuel in, right?
Yeah.
Well, my bike is just sipping on like 5 cents worth of electricity and it is ready to go again. And I'm like, wow, okay, that is super, super efficient. And so the lithium ion battery technology is really, really more efficient than we are. And when you combine it with a solar charging station and you get clean green fuel as well, now we're really taking another step into the future for local clean transportation. But when you look it up under the book, you open it up, what's the problem with any electric vehicle? It's the battery, right? And so we need to understand, what are we working with? How does it work? And so what we do is we bring a battery in and we give it a full charge. We give it a full fair shot.
Okay.
And then we hook it up to this equipment and it drains it down slowly. And it understands how many amp hours of capacity does it have left. That's kind of like how many gallons of fuel in my car. My Honda has a 12-gallon tank and I could go 300 miles, right?
Yeah.
Well, this has a 10 amp hour battery. Or nowadays, what we're seeing in the last few years, bigger batteries. They're getting up in 14, 15, 17, 20 amp hour batteries. So they're using double battery packs to be able to go 70, 80 mile run. And so we need to understand, like, what's the state of that battery, because after the first season, it might be down to 90% of its original capacity.
Sure.
And the next season, maybe down to 80%. But in the third or fourth year, we want to know, is it still up at 80%? Or did we hammer it so hard that it's down at 50%?
What's the threshold of, well, it's time to replace and have that battery recycled?
It depends on how the rider is using it, because some cyclists are only going a mile or two to work and back and forth, and they could just keep recharging and use a battery that only has half capacity.
Oh, okay.
But if you got an adventure rider that's like, we're going up to Pingree Park, I could do it in 4 hours now, well, they need full battery. They need, they need full capacity, right? And so it depends on the rider type of what they are putting that equipment through.
I've been seeing some event rides where, like the MS, they will they have a ride here locally and across the nation, different rides, and it's a 2-day event. And they've been suggesting carrying a backup battery, which to me kind of sounds insane because that's a lot of extra weight just to carry. And I was going to see if there's a way to have like charging stations, maybe one way or one part of the route where they could just plug in. And is there, I would say, a universal charger out there to do all these different batteries, or is that like going down a rabbit hole of doing something like that?
Good ideas, great ideas. When we did Ride the Rockies, we went from Carbondale to Fort Collins over 5 days, and they were generally 80-mile rides, right? Okay. Well, my battery pack would last about 40 miles. Okay. And so I needed a second battery pack to be able to keep up with these road riders that were doing the distance, right? Yeah. And so we put a second battery on the back rack, and then when we got to the high school where we were all camping out in the soccer field, we would go inside and set up our chargers, and we would let it charge overnight, and so that it was fully ready for the next day ride. When we're going up and over Independence Pass, I mean, it's like a 4-hour climb, right? And so basically used a full battery just on that one climb.
Gotcha.
And needed to have extra energy to be able to keep going to make it to the next town where we were going to be able to replenish the batteries again and have our food and sleep and get ready to go again. And so on an event like that, then we'll see people use a second battery or have a second or third battery available.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, we saw some German people that came from California to Colorado. They were with a group called Extra Energy, and they were running hay bikes, and yeah, they had 2 or 3 batteries, but they were running 110, 115-pound bikes where they had their gear where they were camping out, right?
Yeah.
And it was really amazing adventure cycling where they were really doing the distance, and so they would use a couple. But for general around town, a standard battery pack is going to be fine. Like most people that are riding around town, they're not going to really be doing more than 8 or 10 miles one way.
Okay.
And these bikes, they're easily got a 30-mile range, 40-mile range, depending upon what you're running.
Okay.
And so if you have your tire pressure up,
Yeah.
alert, alert. Tire pressure is the
key.
biggest thing, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes, let me go on a rant here. You get a 4-inch tire that's supposed to be at 20 pounds and it's down at 10 or 12 pounds.
Yeah.
It feels nice and squishy. You don't feel any bumps at all, you know? And they're like, wow, my battery just doesn't seem to be working. I've only got a 10-mile range. And I'm like, well, let's take a look. Yeah, no, you need to bring your tire pressure up. So nowadays, I just hand out little tire pressure gauges with everybody. If they got a fat tire bike, I'm like, you got to check your tire pressure and really make sure, bring it up. If it says 20, I want that up at least 22 pounds, 25 pounds. Let's push it. I want it firm so that it rolls like bearings on glass, because that's how you're going to get your best efficiency.
Yeah. Well, thanks for hanging out with me in Precision E-Bikes. What's probably the top 3 services that you provide that you're probably the most popular that you provide in your shop here?
So our shop, we specialize in doing a full tune-up on the bike. I mean, people will bring a bike in and we'll go through the whole thing, make sure that the tires are good, the brakes are good, all your cables are good, it's shifting well. We've had to straighten out so many derailleur hangers, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like almost every bike you need a derailleur hanger adjustment, right?
Yeah.
And so that's our main focus, that's our main customer.
Okay.
But then we get people who are coming in and they want to get these tire liners in there because the bane of our existence is the goat heads, right? These darn goat heads are just taking people off of the streets. And so, we're doing tire liners, and we use the stands sealant in there, and it works really, really well against these goat heads. So we do fix a flat on the spot. But our second biggest is doing conversions.
Oh, okay,
And people bring in a bike that fits them well, and then we'll mount up a system that will grab onto the bottom bracket and then help pull chain.
That's right. That's right. I've seen several of those. I had a buddy of mine do a conversion years ago, and I gave him a lot of crap because we went for a ride and he was on my back wheel the whole time. Whatever, but it was fun.
He should be pulling you along.
I know.
He was pulling you.
I knew the trail. And he didn't, so I didn't want to lose him off a corner and into the field somewhere. But it's good to know. So good conversions. I mean, he's based in Fort Collins, Colorado, which is not too far of a drive from the Denver metro area or even the Cheyenne, Wyoming corridor as well. Make the trip, make an appointment. He'll get you all set up. Would you entertain, like, I got this Waterford classic road bike and I want you to do a conversion? Will you be willing to have people ship product to you to have conversions and repairs done and sent back?
Yes. You know what? We've seen bikes coming in from 5 states around us. We've had it from Kansas, New Mexico, Utah, Wyoming, North Dakota, Nebraska, Utah. I mean, it's just like people coming in because there's not many people who are specializing in conversions that fit their needs. And so we do bottom bracket, mid-drive setups. We do standard hub motors, but we also do ultralight hub motors. And these are where they just have a little tiny water bottle battery and a little tiny 250 watt up in the front, and you could barely even feel that it's there.
Yeah.
And that road bike just rides really like a traditional road bike, but then when you get on that hill, it starts to help pull.
Yeah.
You know, so if you're putting out 150 watts and then all of a sudden you get another 250 behind you, you can really take the wind out of that hill.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so that's what we're finding more and more now are more serious cyclists that are bringing in really nice equipment. We had a lady come in from Boulder. She had a Zin magnesium, like custom bike, right? And she's like, beautiful, beautiful, really lightweight kit. We've had people come in from Estes Park. They're just like, when I get out of my driveway, it's either up or down, and up or down. And I'm tired of putting my bike on the car to go to Loveland to go for a bike ride to come back again. Exactly. I want to be able to ride here. Yeah. And so we're empowering these people. And the newest thing right now is that they have a torque sensor to understand how hard you're pedaling to really make the hybridization really, really smooth.
Wow.
And so it understands that you need more energy because you're pressing harder on the pedals. And so some of these bikes don't have a throttle at all. And it's just understanding that it's working with the rider.
Nice.
And so that's where we're really moving towards is perfecting that hybridization so it becomes a bionic cyclist.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, great things you're doing here. It's awesome.
Thank you, buddy.
It's a need that needs to be filled. It's a market that is exploding, still exploding. It's going to go through peaks and valleys. I invite you to hang out with me in my garage, and we'll do a conversation about the whole industry, and that'll be coming up down the road. But this is a great place. So look him up on his website.
Hey, you going to Cabda?
Yes, in Vegas.
Yeah.
So we have a condo there. So
try and meet you out there.
Yeah, we'll definitely.
It's going to be e-bike heavy.
That's what I've heard.
Yeah,
so we'll see. Maybe you'll pal around and just point me in the right direction to go because
it'll be a great test track.
Yeah.
You're going to be able to go and ride some really neat bikes.
That's so cool.
Get on some of the mid drives, the really advanced new Bosches.
Yeah.
Really, really high grade equipment.
Nice. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, cool.
Well, if you're looking to convert in your old one, get your one that's fixed or anything, give him a try, give him a call, or drop by his website, precisionebike.com.
Thank you.
I'll have all the links below. Any conversations or questions, throw it down in the comments. He actually watches my channel, so he'll probably be watching in. He'll probably comment on a few of those comments too. Well, thanks again for hanging out with me in the garage, and it's nice in your neck of woods. Please go for a ride. Until next time, from Josh's garage to yours.
Nice.